$23.8 billion, an incredibly massive number, is the investment that NASA has poured into developing and manufacturing the SLS Moon rocket for the Artemis mission. It's hard to imagine such an enormous sum being spent on a rocket program that has only achieved a single flight. However, this entire investment risks becoming worthless as SLS faces possible cancellation. Recent moves from Boeing have made this clear. Let's find out on today's episode of Alpha Tech. But first, we need your support. Our next goal is 120,000 subscribers. So hit that subscribe button and you'll never miss any of our episodes. Of course, we strive to get better in every way, and thank you so much for being here. In an unexpected and abrupt move, Boeing, the primary contractor for SLS, summoned an all-hands meeting for approximately 800 employees working on the SLS program. With less than an hour's notice, workers gathered to hear a brief. David Dutcher, Boeing's vice president and SLS program manager, said the company's contract for the rocket could end in March. Although the decision's not yet been finalized, Boeing is prepared for the possibility that NASA will not renew agreements for future SLS missions. If this happens, the company will be forced to reduce its SLS workforce and issue layoff notices in compliance with labor laws. To align with the revisions to Artemis and cost expectations, today we informed our Space Launch Systems team of the potential for approximately 400 fewer positions by April this year, a spokesperson for Boeing said. This will require 60-day notices of involuntary layoffs to be issued to impacted employees in coming weeks in accordance with the Worker Adjustment Act. We are working with our customers and seeking opportunities to redeploy employees across our company to minimize job losses and retain talent. Besides the immediate impact will be the loss of at least 400 jobs by April, but the ripple effects extend far beyond just Boeing. Thousands of additional workers at subcontractors like Northrop Grumman, Aerojet Rocketdyne, and smaller suppliers that support SLS could also face layoffs. The potential cancellation of the program represents not only the end of a high-profile NASA project, but also a blow to the aerospace workforce with economic consequences for multiple states that have long relied on government space contracts. Many may wonder about Boeing's swift decision to go public. However, this is not merely based on speculation. Boeing almost certainly has compelling evidence indicating that SLS's program is highly likely to get canceled. The timing of Boeing's announcement coincides with the anticipated release of the Trump administration's budget proposal for FY26, adding another layer to the uncertainty of the fate of the Space Launch System, SLS. While the budget proposal is not yet final, it serves as a policy roadmap outlining funding priorities that Congress are going to debate in the coming months. If the administration formally recommends canceling SLS, it could signal a major shift in NASA's moon exploration strategy, favoring more cost-effective commercial alternatives. According to sources within NASA and the White House, there has been an ongoing debate over whether to continue SLS for at least 2 more missions, Artemis 2 and 3, before shutting it down. NASA's acting administrator, Janet Petro, has reportedly pushed to keep SLS going long enough to complete these missions, including the first crewed moon landing under Artemis. However, strong opposition from commercial space advocates has made this outcome increasingly unlikely. Critics of SLS argue that the cost, over $2 billion a launch, not including ground operations or payloads, just make it unsustainable, claiming that continuing the program would slow progress as Boeing and its contractors rely on cost-plus contracts, incentivizing delays and higher spending instead of efficiency. With private companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin advancing rapidly in heavy-lift rocket development, many think NASA should cut their losses and transition to more competitive and reusable systems. Both BO and SpaceX have developed significantly cheaper heavy-lift rockets that are at least partially reusable, making them more cost-effective alternatives to the SLS. SpaceX's Starship and Blue Origin's New Glenn have demonstrated impressive capabilities, signaling a shift away from expensive launch systems toward commercially driven solutions. Despite these advancements, none of these alternatives are currently human-rated for moon missions. While Crew Dragon is certified for LEO operations, it lacks the necessary life support for systems and shielding for deep space travel. Similarly, Blue Origin's New Glenn has yet to carry any crewed payloads, making it an unviable replacement for SLS right now. Human-rating a rocket is a complex process, taking years of rigorous testing and certification. Starship in particular shows great promise as a future moon transport transport system, but it's still years away from being fully operational. The vehicle's design relies on multiple in-orbit refueling operations, at least 10 for a moon mission, posing significant technical challenges. Nonetheless, if there is a viable alternative to SLS Orion and even the Lunar Gateway, Starship is the most suitable candidate. While it still requires technical refinements and extensive safety assessments, SpaceX's rapid development pace cannot be ignored. Has there ever been a Starship launch that didn't capture global attention? Ultimately, the key issue is time. If the U.S. government cannot wait for Starship to become fully operational, it'll need to maintain the SLS program at least through Artemis 4. However, if canceling this expensive rocket program is the goal, an immediate replacement must be identified. Truth be told, there are alternative methods for getting astronauts to the moon without SLS that have already been proposed. One option is to launch Orion's spacecraft using Falcon Heavy, then dock with a Centaur 5 upper stage to propel it to the moon. This scenario was suggested by former NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine in 2019 as part of a plan to get to the moon by 2024. Technically, this is a feasible and more cost alternative to SLS. However, challenges remain as neither Centaur 5 or Falcon Heavy is currently human-rated. Adapting these systems for crewed moon missions would require years of development and certification, making it unlikely that they could be ready in time to meet NASA's Artemis objectives. Meanwhile, China's lunar program is advancing rapidly with a planned crewed moon landing before the end of the decade. Unlike the uncertainty surrounding SLS, China's approach appears to be well-funded and progressing well. If NASA is forced to spend years developing a new launch architecture, China could easily pass up the U.S. in the race of getting a long-term presence on the moon. The possibility of losing this symbolic milestone to a geopolitical rival raises serious concerns about America's leadership in space exploration. After all, this is the reality we're seeing. However, Boeing's sudden announcement about possible layoffs and termination of SLS may not just be a reaction to shifting NASA priorities. It could also be a strategic move to rally support for keeping the program alive. By publicly warning about job losses, Boeing may be attempting to pressure lawmakers and stakeholders into opposing the proposed budget cuts. With thousands of jobs on the line across many states, the company could be hoping to stir up resistance before a final decision gets made. Members of Congress from states heavily invested in SLS like Alabama, Louisiana, and Florida are likely to push back against the cancellation. These lawmakers have long defended SLS funding due to its economic impact on their constituents, and they may work to secure continued financial support for the program. Additionally, there's support from contractors involved in the broader Artemis program who also stand to lose if SLS's funding is cut. During a panel about the upcoming Artemis 2 mission at the Spacecom conference here on January 29th, Kirk Shireman, Orion program manager at Lockheed, says he's familiar with the uncertainty that comes with changes in administrations and urged employees to tune out the distraction. The best thing we can do is keep your head down and work as hard as you can. He said NASA's current approach to Artemis, which uses the Orion spacecraft launched on the SLS rocket, as well as the Lunar Gateway and landers being developed by Blue Origin and SpaceX, remained effective despite criticism about costs and delays. What we need to do is tell the people in the new administration and anyone we can talk to about this, hey, the fastest way to get humans back on the moon is to stay the course, he said. Things take a long time to build and certify. If you throw them away every 4 years and start over, that's probably the slowest and most expensive thing we could do. Stay the course. Let's put humans back on the moon and let's do the things that we've been tasked to do, he concluded. Others on the panel, including officials from NASA, Boeing, and ground system contractors, agreed but did not add to his comments. The panel emphasized the progress being made on Artemis 2, the first crewed flight of SLS and Orion, including preparations of the rocket, spacecraft, and ground systems. However, that mission, once set to launch in late 2024, has slipped more than a year. NASA announced December 5th it was postponing the launch to April of next year after completing an analysis of the erosion of the heat shield on the Orion capsule flown on the uncrewed Artemis mission in 2022. April of next year is a no later than date for the mission. Matt Ramsey, Artemis 2 manager at NASA, said during the panel, "The agency has challenged us to do better, and we're in the process of figuring out what better looks like," he said, with the work to do launch date coming in the next few weeks. With the heat shield issue resolved, he said key factors driving the launch date will be working on assembling the vehicle. Crews are currently stacking segments of the SLS's twin solid boosters, a process that should be completed in the next 2 to 3 weeks, said Brad McCain, Deputy Program Manager for Ground Operations and Momentum. Once the vehicle is fully assembled, it will roll out to LC-39B for a tanking test. The schedule for that test is a little bit of a variable, said Charlie Thompson, NASA's Artemis launch director, but would be no earlier than the fall. There is also routine issues that occur on the program, Ramsey added. There's a whack-a-mole every day where we find problems, fix problems, and move on to the next day. Right now, we're all holding our breath, waiting for a resolution to this complex situation. The critical question is whether Artemis's budget will be sufficient enough for NASA to maintain SLS. What is the most appropriate choice for continuing the mission? The future of Artemis, returning humans to the moon, now hinges on this critical decision from NASA and Congress. This isn't just about a single space program. It's a pivotal moment that could reshape America's entire space strategy for decades to come. If the United States truly wants to maintain and strengthen its leading position in the new space race to the moon, especially as other nations out there up their space programs, making the right decision now is crucial. The future of the American aerospace industry, along with thousands of jobs and opportunities for technological innovation, depends on this decision. That's all for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.